All right, this is our third section for the legislative branch. This one we have a couple of different names, but most of this will be a summary of a lot of the things we'd had in the past, but kind of combining it together. This is where a lot of the College Board questions will come from in here. First section we have here is about the importance of parties, where we saw in other things like in elections as well as overall we have had more of a de-alignment and less people with the parties and importance. That is not true with Congress. That's one place that is really important. That hierarchy is extremely important for what is done. Majority party, minority party, there, who's in control. It doesn't matter Republican or Democrat in here. This is where it flips from time to time there that we have. So, and that is where like even things like filibusters and different rules that you have, that's where the importance is more the what will be, who's in the majority, who's not in the majority. Remember, committees are made of the same percentage as the full House percentage. Now, for the House leadership, the most important person in the House, and some people will say that maybe the Founding Fathers actually meant for this person to be more powerful than the President, is the Speaker of the House. The presiding officer is a person that controls the committee assignments, controls committees, controls what goes to bills, controls the debates, everything. If the Speaker of the House does not want something to become a law, it will not happen, pretty much with that. The majority leader is number 2 for the majority party. This is where they're going to assist the Speaker. The plans are to try to help the agenda. Not the same as this for the Senate, where in the Senate the majority leader is the number 1 of the majority party. The minority leader, both in the House and the Senate, is of whichever is the minority party. You might think they don't have much power. No, it's very important here. They got to pick and choose when they're going to really fight something. They got to have opposition in there. They are the major spokesperson that's seen on camera for the minority party there. For the whips, in the House, the whips are extremely important. Now, whips are actual representatives or senators. They're not people, or all of these are the actual representatives and senators, and this is where they are chosen within the House, and the Senate will have it. The whips will be doing the dirty work for the majority leader and the Speaker of the House. They count the votes, try to figure out how things are going to pass. They keep track of it. They're the ones that will have to do a little bit of sweet talking if they needed someone to change their vote, or sometimes a little arm twisting to get them to vote. In the Senate, officially the Vice President is the President of the Senate. Most of the time that does not mean a whole lot. This is where we saw Mr. Smith goes to Washington. They do have the Vice President there. They even refer to him as Mr. President because he is the President of the Senate. Usually the Vice President is not there unless it is where they have to vote in case of a tie. That's the one constitutional power they have. In the past, very powerful person was the President pro tempore there. If the Vice President isn't there, it is the temporary President. Today, that is not as much, as more ceremonial to whoever is the person that has the most seniority from the majority party. Currently, it is Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa there. In the past, this was power, but today the real power in the Senate is the majority leader. It's the same role as the House of organizing the majority party. It's not as powerful as the Speaker of the House, though, because a lot more things are done to give individual power, where the Speaker of the House can shut everything down. The majority leader has a lot of power, but not quite as much. Minority leader, same role as the House, to make sure you have opposition, make sure you're the major spokesman for here. And whips, there's not as many, because with 100 senators, it's a lot easier to figure out where the numbers are coming from, so you don't have to have the whips and associate whips as much in here. Once again, we have committee chairmen in the notes. This is extremely important. That's part of that hierarchy that you have. They are the ones that they can personally usually kill a bill also if it comes to their committee. Sometimes that's where the majority leader or the Speaker will make sure. Key term you need to know that we haven't had before was ranking member. The ranking member is the leader of the minority party inside that committee. All right, powers of Congress. This is a repeat question that we have for AP. A lot of times you think, okay, it's just to make laws. Yes, in the Constitution, Article 1, in there, Section 8, all those clauses, you have, first of all, the enumerated ones that tell that they have the power to tax, the power to do this and that. And there you have the implied powers there, the necessary and proper. But besides the making laws, there's other powers. The other major one, and I don't have this in the notes, but it should be there, the power of the purse is the way that's termed a lot of times. Congress controls the money, which, as some of you know with your parents, if you control the money, you control a lot in here. They have electoral power. If there is not a majority in the electoral college, the House chooses the president, the Senate chooses the vice president. For the amendments, they are half the process. For every amendment that's been made, they are the ones that propose it. It then goes to the state. So they have that power. You'll notice some of these are checks and balances that we also have in here. So the power for the amendments is one of their checks they have. If the Supreme Court rules something unconstitutional, they can propose an amendment to add it to the Constitution. They have the impeachment charges, not just of the president, but also for the judicial branch with judges and justices. Oversight, you've seen this word over and over again. This is where it's real important to investigate the programs on the executive branch. We're going to see this more in the bureaucracy. That's part of the iron triangle side of this. For the executive powers, the Senate, they have the advise and consent ability, which means that they can approve or confirm appointments to, whether it be for a judge, justice, a cabinet member, a head of a bureaucracy, all the way down. They also have the ability to approve a treaty. The president can negotiate, but the Senate approves it. Again, the Treaty of Versailles is a great example where Woodrow Wilson had the major part of that, yet the Senate did not approve it. All right, earmarks. Earlier we had about pork barrel projects. Here's where for the earmark. In the appropriations bill, this is where the spending is designated for. So the authorization bill authorizes some sort of project, but the appropriations bill is where it is the spending for it. We saw this in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington for the Willett Creek Dam. It is authorized, but then they called it a deficiency bill for their appropriations, where it was Section 40 in the movie. They have it. So the money gone there. This is basically thought of with the pork barrel projects. Examples of this would be a moped museum for Inverness, Florida, which for legislators, they want to bring home the money, the more money that they bring home for their own little projects. So they want to get the money that is spent in their district. One of the best things to kind of see for pork barrel projects and earmarks is this cartoon. Bad pork, good pork. And look and see what's the difference. If the money is going someplace else, the earmarks, then that's bad pork. We don't want our taxpayer money going to someplace in New York or California or Kansas. We want it to come here. So if the money's coming here for something, that's good pork when the earmarks are for us. Okay, tax and spend powers. Again, Congress has power of the purse. They control the budget. Again, what's brought in and then what's spent on things in here. Now, here's a broad question, but this is where we're going to go deeper in this when we have our budget chapter. But most Americans want us to have a balanced budget, and they want to have low taxes there. Now, the balanced budget, a lot of people say the government needs to be like a home there, which you don't spend more than what you bring in. But they want to have low taxes. But then there's another problem, because when it comes for government programs, if there's ever going to be a cut to something, you have some group that is opposing it. If we were to cut the military, there will be people opposing. We're gonna cut things for elder people like Medicare, Social Security. There will be a backlash. If we're going to cut things when it comes for education, there's going to be a backlash. So people want to pay less taxes, but they still want to get all the benefits. The problem then is that we have a deficit spending, and we end up going into more and more debt every year with this. So that's where they contradict each other with that idea. You can't have low taxes but also high spending there. Otherwise, you do have, and one of the reasons why we are over $23 trillion in debt now. All right, the War Powers Act, we're going to see this pop up a couple different times there. After Vietnam, Congress is going to pass this. Now, Congress will have with the War Power Act certain restrictions on the president if the president is to send their troops into a harmful way. They have to notify within 48 hours. They have to get permission within 60 days in certain situations. So the question that came around is this constitutional? Congress has the power to declare war in Article 1, but the President is the Commander-in-Chief in Article 2. So is Article 1 more powerful than Article 2, or Article 2 more powerful than Article 1? If we were to ask 100 constitutional lawyers, we would probably have 50-50. And what's happened since 1973 when this has been passed is when the president seems to be doing too much, Congress kind of waives the War Powers Act. And one power they do have is with budget that they can start doing things. But the president is actually allowed to move around money within the military somewhat. So this is where they kind of just use it to try to have as an unofficial check on each other to make sure if they start going too far one way or the other. All right, here's where for the differences between the House and the Senate, this is where a reoccurring question. A lot of this is where you would end up writing and explaining how basic ideas that we had back in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 with where you have things. So the House is larger. Okay, the Senate is smaller, 435 versus 100. So in the House, most all of the work is done in committees and even more specialized in subcommittees. Where in the Senate, because of a smaller number, there are committees, but a lot of that work is done and it's more broad. The Senate also, where I have the club in there, the senators are usually a lot more personal with each other. Even when they're in different parties, they have to work with each other a lot more, and they're going to be a lot more civil. Part of this comes about because of the terms that they have. If you have a 2-year term, there's a lot more turnover in the House with larger size. Meanwhile, you're not going to have, but usually around 10 to 15 senators change every 2 years, and that's in a high year. So most of the time there's not much changeover. Where the House, there's a lot more people, a lot more changeover. It's more prestigious to be in the Senate than the House. The Senate is usually not to be seen as close to the people where the House is because of usually smaller districts and 2-year terms. Such have it. This House has very, very formal rules, starting with the Rules Committee and what the Speaker of the House does. The Senate is less formal. Example would be like filibusters and holds. The power differences, you'll notice in here, these are things that we've had in the notes before, but this is stuff that you must remember, and then you'll have in the writing. The House, all revenue bills must start in the House. That is one of the few powers the House has over the Senate. If the Electoral College does not have a majority, the House is who selects the president there. And this is where impeachment charges start in the House. Know these 3 things. That is specifically with the House, not the Senate. Don't say Congress, say the House of Representatives. Don't say the legislative branch, again, say the House. Meanwhile, for the Senate, major thing that they have is to confirm all presidential appointees. Again, judges, justices, secretaries of departments in the bureaucracy, head of bureaucracies, ambassadors, all of those things, the advise and consent. Senatorial courtesy, this is one of your vocabulary words. The judges of a state, if they ever have where the president's going to appoint a judge, like nearby Ocala has a federal tax court. So if the president was to appoint a judge for there, they normally are going to go to our 2 senators and ask them for a list of who they would want beforehand, or if not, they would at least say, these are people I had that I'm thinking about. You would do that before, but if they didn't and the senators of that state don't like them, even the same party, all the senators will vote against that confirmation there. Again, that's kind of the idea for the club, because you don't want that to happen to your state, so you want to make sure that it doesn't happen in someone else's state. The approved treaties is also with the advise and consent. Again, the Treaty of Versailles is a great example of when the Senate did not approve a treaty that was negotiated by the president. The impeachment trials take place in the Senate. Again, the charges in the House, the trials take place in the Senate. In the Electoral College, there, if it doesn't have a majority, the Senate chooses the vice president. Again, those are all ones you need to remember. Those are with the Senate, not the House. Why do we have a system for the minority to stop the majority? Here's where our framers designed it that way. They wanted to make sure we didn't have unnecessary laws. They wanted to make sure, going back to the Mayflower Compact, that even though we have majority rule, we do have rights and things to protect the minority there. When its president's tenure is usually the most successful for influencing Congress, day one. Okay, well, we've got basically a honeymoon period. Every day the president's in office, the less power that they have. Most presidents have their first 100 days. One of the reasons why a lot of Republicans supported Trump and his idea that it was a fraudulent election was to try to make it where Biden did not have as much of that honeymoon period in the beginning when he ran, so they could oppose him in the Senate and the House more on ideas that he had. Second terms even more so, and especially the last 2 years, when you are definitely a lame dunk president, there's less reason for even your own party to be listening to you. Single issue voters, this goes back to our voting thing. Single issue voters are someone usually like on gun rights, environment, or abortion, that's the one issue that they vote on. The reason why they make a legislator nervous is you may please almost everything that voter has, but you're different on that one issue. You're pro-life and they're pro-choice and that's their major issue. You can't win them over in there because when they're on that extreme that you have in here. All right, what is the College Board focused on? Everything. Haha. No, really, it really is. The whole part we have about House and Senate differences, powers of the House and the Senate. Gerrymandering, you've seen that a bunch of times. Redistricting. A popular thing in recent years has been casework. The idea of the constituent services where they have the cases that they're working on for the people in their district there. Voting wise, incumbent advantages, that would be for the legislators senators and representatives, where we focused a lot on the election on the president, but this is where they would have, especially representatives. Recent years, a lot more with the gridlock, the polarizations of parties that you have. A reoccurring theme is to make sure you know the difference between trustee, delegate, politico, and the way that a representative will vote. Rules Committee comes up again and again there. Make sure you know that's with the House. So the two committees that are just with the House, the Rules and the Ways and Means Committee, that's the way that they make sure that you know with standing committees. Iron triangles, we're going to come more back into that, but we had the second level of it. Earlier was interest groups. This unit was the congressional committees and subcommittees. Later on, the bureaucracies that you have. Question on party polarization. Here you see incumbency advantage, gerrymandering, differences between the different parties. The idea that of the majority party, minority party in the House and then in the Senate, and then explaining of the passage of the bill. The idea that Congress is bicameral. Why did the framers have that? A power unique to the House, a power unique to the Senate in there. Why did they have it? Specialization in committees, log rolling, the representation on committees in there. Party leadership that you have. So again, a bunch of things that can be when it comes to the legislative branch.